In June, the House of Commons passed a Conservative motion calling on the government to recoup the $64 million wasted in the ArriveCAN scandal from GC Strategies. Ms. Reza, as Deputy Minister, did you have any input on the government's decision to enforce this House of Commons motion?
No, I didn't have any input. We have, as you know, been very involved in terms of trying to recover money and working with CBSA in terms of identifying elements that can be recovered, as well as the RCMP.
The government has announced that they are only seeking $198,000 in damages out of the $64 million. Why is the government only seeking to recover 0.03% of the funds from ArriveCAN?
I can start that question, and maybe I'll turn to Madame Poulin to give us more information. We look at every procurement, every dollar spent in terms of, is there abuse, fraud, and when we do find that in terms of overbilling, we go after the suppliers to seek that recovery from either themselves or through their supply chain. And in this case, that is, I think, on the GC strategy side. Mais peut-être tu peux rajouter quelque chose?
Would you like to add something, though, perhaps? It's important to note that the amount that we're trying to recover from GC strategy, it's not linked in any ways to the ArriveCAN. So it's an amount that it was overbilled prior to the ArriveCAN, and GC Strategies was one of the prime contractors using our resources that overbilled the federal government. So the amount that you mentioned is the amount we're trying to recover because they haven't accepted to repay the amount when we ask them.
They haven't accepted. I mean, certainly they had contracts beyond ArriveCAN, so I would expect that the amount would actually be greater than that we would seek to recoup, never mind just the funds from ArriveCAN, but only 0.03%, $198,000. That's really a small amount compared to the total value of the contract for GC Strategies within that contract, and even GC Strategies beyond that contract. Of the $198,000, Ms. Reza, how much has the government recouped to date, please?
To turn, and I'll just make the distinction that the $198,000 is from overbilling that is not associated with the CBSA strategies. And do you have that figure? Otherwise, we can come back to you.
No, thank you for the question. So just to put the question in context, the amount that we're trying to recover is tied to the 3 overbilling cases that were announced back in March 2024. And I'm pleased to announce that over the $4.5 million that we announced at that time, we have recovered $4.1 million. So the almost only amount left to be collected is the amount tied to GC strategy. And if we're looking at the legal cases that have been put forward in the Ontario court, we're seeking $400,000 because there's some damage that will be added to the amount that GC strategy owns to the federal government. So it's a big success because on those 3 cases, we almost recover more than 80% of the amount that were overbilled.
Okay, but you're not certain as to the $198,000, if any. You don't have that number with you as to if any of that $198,000 has been collected.
Again, we have put a statement of claim into the Court of Ontario because we were unable to recover that amount. That's why we're turning to the justice system in order to recover those funds from a legal procedure. So on a signifié le statement of claim à GC Strategy, puis on va être en procédure dans les prochains mois.
Okay, well, passed in the House was specific to the ArriveCAN scandal and the $64 million. So it's my hope that the $198,000 would be recovered and that we could report on that as a later date as being recovered. Ms. Reza, in previous testimony to public accounts on this topic, you've stated, as far as recovery efforts are concerned, we've made the commitment to the minister to look at how we can recover the funds that were spent on this contract. Was the recommendation provided to the minister to recover the funds at an amount greater than $198,000?
That question is to be really examined by CBSA. CBSA is the authority whose budget it came from, and we've been working with them to look at some of the accounting around it to see what has been recovered, overbilled, so that work is underway. Je ne sais pas si tu as quelque chose à rajouter.
I'm not sure if you'd like to add something.
That we're dealing with McKinsey, not GC strategies in this report.
Ms. Yip, thank you. That's a point you can make, but as you know, I give members wide latitude here to raise questions when witnesses are before us. If witnesses aren't quite ready to answer, they can say so, and information can be sought later. Ms. Kuzi, you have about a minute left.
Thank you, Chair. I believe the title of the study is Professional Service Contracts, and certainly GC strategies would fall under professional services. Does PSPC, truly believe, after all of the waste, corruption, shady contracting, poor record keeping, subcontracting of basic tasks, and more, that the Canadian taxpayer should recover below 0.5% of the money that was wasted?
Again, and I think you're well aware, the issue is that the $198,000 is associated with overbilling that is not CBSA related. In terms of CBSA contracts with GC strategies directly, they are best placed to look at what they are going to be able to recover. We can certainly talk about the efforts that we're making in terms of managing additional oversight on the spend of professional services across the government.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms.
5
Kuzi.
minutes. Thank you very much, Chair, and good day, dear colleagues and ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the House of Commons. Thank you so much for your services rendered to Canada during difficult missions in Afghanistan and to NORAD, for example. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Chair, the Public Accounts Committee deals directly with taxpayers' money. Who taxpayers are listening to us today, and we've seen in the last few years a sort of a laxism, which is very dishonoring, and the Auditor General has drawn our attention to it. There's also another element. Tens of millions of dollars have been managed very poorly with the ArriveCAN scandal, for example, and this is a reality. A few months ago, in June, the House of Commons adopted a motion to the effect that GC strategies hire or pay us back $64 million. Where are we with that? Thank you for the question. As I was saying earlier, we have no visibility on that motion. The $64 million is not within our portfolio. It's with CBSA, and they are working with the RCMP, I believe, to see what they can recoup. What we are working on is the $200,000 via a statement of claim presented to the courts, and we're trying to recoup that. All right, so you're talking about $198,000 when most MPs elected by the electors are calling for the $64 million. So why don't we pull out all the stops to get that $64 million back? And if not, do you accept that we MPs require it? Thank you for the question. So for PSPC, what's within our purview, we have looked at that and consulted our legal counsel to see what we could recover. Even if we wish to recover, you have to be in a position to take it to court and to win in court. We are not the contracting authority. We are not the organization that had received the services, so our role is considerably restricted. Ms. Poulin earlier was mentioning sums that had been recovered. This was within an area of our purview, our competency, and elsewhere, did they fail to provide services and so on? And if they did, then you could certainly work up a statement of claim. We cannot do that. It depends on the agency that actually received the services, and in this case, it's CBSA. They must determine what to do. This is $64 million that were very poorly used, and taxpayers paid for it. We should act very promptly, at very least, especially when a parliament that has just been elected insists on this amount being recovered. And speaking of taxpayer money, the Auditor General's report regarding what went on with McKinsey is really quite shocking. 9 out of 10 departments and several corporate and Crown corporations did not manage funds appropriately in their contracting, did not respect the suppliers or procurement policies, non-competitive awarding, no confirmation of delivery, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm quoting the report, and I can continue down this vein. So, Ms. Beck, your testimony a couple of days ago was very interesting. It was about healthy management and appropriate management of public funding. So, how come things went so badly for you? Well, the Auditor General's report points out a number of things, and also our internal report as well, which picked up pretty much the same things about many of our contracts. And we also heard from the procurement ombudsman about pretty much the same services. So it is very important that we take all this seriously and bring about change. As you know, a good deal of investment is coming down the pipeline towards us, and we've done everything to ensure that this not take place again. But why did it happen in the first place? Were people turning a blind eye year in and year out? I wouldn't say they were turning a blind eye, but I can say that at the time it was tributary to the situations at the time. We were under a good deal of pressure to get deliverables out, and we chose what was available in terms of contracts.